Welcome to 21 Knots Salesforce How-To Thursdays. In this two-part series, we'll be building a project management app that will be tied to accounts and give us the ability to track time on a project. Given that this how-to is split into two parts, today's focus will be on the foundation of our app. We'll build our two objects, the project management object and the timekeeping object, and we'll build a report that will sum the hours worked on any given project. In part 2 of the series, we'll be putting everything together, meaning we'll build the actual app with tabs as well as look into sharing settings. Are you ready to start with part 1? Let's build the foundation. Okay, before we start building this app, you might want to reference this entity relationship diagram or cheat sheet that I've made available down in the notes section. This kind of gives you an overview of what we'll be setting up in Salesforce as our new project management app. So there's essentially two objects, two custom objects that we'll be creating. The first one is the project object, which we'll go and do right now. And then once we have our project object built, we're going to go and create the timesheet and associated to the project object, and you'll see how that works. I've also included the formulas that we're using in this module, so go ahead, download the file, and then you'll have all the information you need to build the project management app. Let's go. So I'm going to log into my environment. And here we are in the setup screen. If you're not in the setup screen, you can go ahead and click on this little cog wheel icon here and click on setup. And it'll basically bring you here. Once we're at this stage, what I like to do is use this schema builder. So if you just search for schema, you can pull up the schema builder. And then in here, if you've never seen the schema builder, it's essentially a visual diagram of all your objects within the Salesforce environment and then how they relate to each other. I mean, this can get pretty massive, as you can imagine, and as you add objects. But for now, what we're going to do is clear all, give us a blank slate. And then we want to go to the Elements tab, and then we want to create a new object. This first object is going to be the project object that we're going to create. So label is going to be project, projects, and record is going to be project name, data type is text, that's fine. Let's allow reports and activities on this. Let's deploy it and click on save. Now that we have our projects object, we need to create the fields essentially. So the ones that are in red on your cheat sheet are already created. And then we just created our project name, which is essentially the index of how the records will be sorted within this particular object. So now I want to add a master detail relationship to the account, because every project will be associated to an account that I have. So again, use your cheat sheet and follow along. Account name. Related to, and this is the account object. Here is the child relationship. The rest we can just leave as is. Save it. The next is going to be, I'm just going down the list here, is going to be a date field. And date. Save it. Let's skip over the hours worked to date roll-up summary field now because we need to create the timesheet object before we do so. So let's just move on here. Last month's timesheet is going to be a formula that is going to link to a timesheet report for the given project. And we'll see how that looks like. And here, I'm going to grab this formula. And what we'll do is we'll replace the little report ID once we have the report built. And that looks good. I'm going to return type is going to be text because it's going to be URL. Next field is the opportunity. We want to link our projects to opportunities as well, so this will make that link. We're going to do a lookup field. And obviously it's going to relate to the opportunity. The rest is fine. We click on save. Project description is going to be text. Let's make it a length of 255 characters. Project name was created at the onset of creating the project object, so we're good there. Project status is the next one, which we're going to create a pick list from. And for values, we are going to create not started, ongoing, complete. You can put whatever values you see you deem appropriate in here. Project type is another pick list. And I'll be using this field to display whether this is a fixed price project or a time and materials project. Let's skip over remaining hours for now because we need our total hours field before that. So let's keep going. Start date is going to be a date field. And total hours is going to be a number. And let's make it a length of 16 with 2 decimals. So there are now 2 missing fields if you refer to the cheat sheet. One is hours worked to date, and we stated earlier that we need to have the timesheet object created before then. And the other one is remaining hours, which relies on the timesheet object as well, because it's a calculation of all the hours that were worked to date for a given project. So let's go ahead and create a new object, which is our timesheet object. And then we'll be able to come back to project and tie it all together. we essentially want the object to be a timesheet number. So this index will be a auto number. Starting number, we could say 1. We want to allow reports and activities on timesheets. And we want to leave it in deployed status. For the display format, what we're going to do here is do a 4-digit year as a prefix to a number. So any timesheets that will be created this year will have this 2020 appended to it as a prefix, and then we could start with a number. So I'm going to use a variation of this field here. Year. I don't want the month, but then I want a number, -0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Click on save. Okay. Now, what kind of data do we want to capture for timesheets? Well, we want to capture who is entering the time. So we're going to create a consultant field that will pull from the user table, which is essentially all the users that are in Salesforce. We're going to create a checkbox to denote whether a particular timesheet line item has been invoiced or not. So we can use that for tracking purposes, leave it unchecked. We want to relate it to this project object, so we're going to create a master detail relationship. And we're going to call this project name. We're going to relate it to the project object, and we're going to call it timesheets. The rest is fine. So you could see that now these two objects are related to each other by this link here. We want to add a date field to track what day that timesheet was written for. We'll call that task date. We want a description to describe what type of work we've done, so that's going to be a text area. Let's do one of these here. Task description. And lastly, total hours for a given line item is going to be a number. And again, 16 characters long with 2 decimal places. Okay, we have our timesheet object completed. Now let's get back to the project for the last step here. We're going to create an hours work to date roll-up summary field. So I'm going to grab roll-up summary, hours worked to date, and we're going to use the timesheet object and sum the total hours. That is all that's required here. And lastly, we need our formula for remaining hours, which is going to be of type formula. Remaining hours, we are going to return a number with 2 decimal places. We want to enter total hours minus hours worked to date. So if you remember, hours worked to date is the summary of all the timesheets for the given project, and then total hours, which is a manually inputted number for that project. And we have this calculation. Okay, that's all there is to it. Let's move on to the next step, where we are going to lay out our objects and create a project management app with the related tabs. All right, from the project object, we are now going to drop this down and go to the actual object and do some laying out. So we are now in the object manager, and we are going to go into page layout and do a little cleanup. So let's select project layout. And in here, let's add some of the fields. So account name, what I'd like to do is put that over here. I'd like to bring the project description down here. The opportunity down here. And then what I'm going to do is add a section called details, 2-column, left to right is fine. In this new details section, I'm going to put the project type, the start date and end date, and project status up here. I'm gonna drop in another section for the hours. Again, 2-column, left to right is fine. We're gonna call it hours. So in this hours section, I want my total hours, which will be manual input. Hours worked to date, which is our roll-up summary field, and remaining hours, which is our formula. I'm going to add yet another section called invoicing. Again, leave the rest as defaults. And over here, we're going to add our formula that launches a report to give us all of last month's time. Now, related list, what I'd like here obviously is to add the timesheets item. So I'm going to go to related list, and we see we have our timesheet object, and I'm going to put it right up top here. Quick save. Let's preview it. As the system administrator. And here is what our new project's layout looks like. I'm going to do a couple of more things here. One is I have the timesheet number, but I want more relevant information to appear. So I'm going to add task date as the first column, then task description, total hours for that task, whether it's been invoiced or not is good information to see at a glance, and timesheet number is fine. We're going to default it in descending order so that we have our dates in descending order. We'll have the latest time on top and the oldest time on the bottom of the list. Click OK. I also want to make the opportunity a required field. So I'm going to click on this little wrench icon and say required. This essentially means that no project will be able to be saved if opportunity is blank. Okay. I'm going to go back to the object manager now. We're almost done. This is the last stretch. We're going to go to timekeeping or timesheet object. And then same thing, timesheet layout. And see what this looks like here. Okay, so we've got timesheet number, which I don't want to see. So I'm going to remove that. I want to see project name. I want to see the consultant that worked that specific task. Task date. Oops. Let's put task description here. Total hours. And invoiced. Okay. So now that we have our timesheet object completed, we need to work on the report that will display the timesheet line items. In order to do so, we're going to need to create a new report type that essentially has the project and timesheet objects, or at least makes them available in the report designer for us to be able to report on. So in order to do so, we need to add a new report type. So we're going to go to report types, click continue on this screen. We are going to create a new custom report type. Primary objects will be accounts. We're going to call this object projects and timesheets. Let's store it in the accounts and contact group and mark it as deployed. Next. So the account is going to relate to the projects, and the projects is going to relate to the timesheet. So we essentially want to report on any accounts that has projects. We don't care on reporting on accounts that do not have projects. So in this B section, we're going to select this first radio button, and then whether or not we want to report on projects with or without timesheets, we want to be able to display all projects. So we're going to select this B records may or may not have related C records. Let's go ahead and click on save. And we've got our new report type with all these fields available. So we now need to build our new report. So I'm going to go to the Sales app, Reports, New Report. And we know we stored it under Accounts and Contacts. So if we go here, we see Projects and Timesheets. Continue. Okay, now we don't want account name. We want project name. We don't want timesheet number. I want the consultant full name. I want the task description. And I want the timesheet total hours. I want to group this by account name and group columns by task date so that we sum up everything here for a given day. In the filters tab, here's the magic. We want to show all accounts, create a date. We're going to show all time, and then project ID. Here's the trick when you do URL-driven reports. We need to pass it a project ID, so that URL link that's in our formula in the project object is what is going to basically grab the ID of the project that we're on and pass that to this report, as you'll see in a second. So the trick, in order to add this and pass it, you need to just put equals, essentially a blank value. And then we want last month's timesheet only. So show me everything that has a task date. And I'm going to use a relative date here and say last month. Apply. Save it. I'm going to call this report last month's timesheet. Oops. Let's make this public so that anyone can access it. Public reports, and click on Save. This concludes part 1 of the series. Stay tuned for part 2, in which we will be putting everything together. Please comment below. Let me know what you'd like to see in future series. And feel free to subscribe. We release a video like this every Thursday. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.